I felt like Michigan, first of all, played one of their worst games of the season in terms of just uncharacteristic mistakes that we just have not seen from this team this year. And it had nothing to do with Alabama, or it was Michigan shooting themselves in the foot, right? You're talking multiple muffed punts. You're talking about Roman Wilson making just a dumb block in the back in a key moment of the game. Like there, the list goes on of things that I'm just like, oh my God, like Michigan they're shooting themselves in the foot. And what was so frustrating and the way I felt watching the game was, and this is like, I would be the first to jump on this podcast and say, like, we were overmatched, we weren't ready, we weren't whatever. I think the most frustrating part about that game throughout it was, and I think I texted you and Kurt this, Michigan's clearly the better football team. And I understand what the score was up until the end of the game. I totally understand that. It's a fair argument. But anybody who watched that game could tell you Michigan was the better football team. Defensively, Jesse Minter, here are your flowers. What he dialed up in that game was incredible. They made Jalen Milroe's life an absolute nightmare. Now, their center didn't do him any favors, snapping the ball into the ground. Caden Proctor, that true freshman left tackle, we talked about it on the last podcast. He got exposed right out of the gate. And the thing about this Michigan front is that they may not have the Aiden Hutchinsons or the Chase Winovich or whatever that they've had over the years. But this is the deepest room I've ever seen them have. The way they rotate guys in, they keep them fresh. They have different skill sets. It's elite. And it was frustrating to me to watch the game to just, like one mistake I didn't even mention, like right out of the gate, JJ throws that first ball. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, so lucky that his foot was out of bounds. But still, it's like, I'll take J.J. McCarthy as the next person to talk about. He did not have a perfect game by any means. He missed throws. He'd be the first to tell you that. But in the biggest moment, when we needed him to deliver, he did. And that's just what this program hasn't done in past years. They deliver in the biggest moments. And JJ did exactly what he needed to do to march that team down the field to tie that game that eventually sent it into overtime to win it. And the last person that I want to talk about is Blake Corum. Legacy game. And he has, if he didn't already cement his legacy at the University of Michigan, that kid absolutely did it Monday night against Alabama. He breaks Anthony Thomas's all-time record for rushing touchdowns in a season, but it was just so much bigger than that. It was the plays he made, the 4th and 2 catch, the big play there, and then obviously the run in overtime to kind of seal the deal. I can't say enough about this team, these guys, these names that just, it felt like from this past, honestly, like from the moment they lost last year to TCU and previewing what the season would be, it's like, this is everything on paper that it was supposed to be, and it's delivered up until this point. And they finally, and we talked about it last week on the podcast, this is why I felt like this game was so important, a non-negotiable that you had to win, because you can bury the past right now. Okay, you're over that hump. Now, sure, the next hump is a very, very big hump, and that's winning a national championship. But to beat Alabama on that stage in the most iconic setting in college football in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and seeing J.J. McCarthy with the rose in his mouth at the end of the game just gives you Charles Woodson vibes. And I'll take it back to 1997. And man, it just feels eerily similar. It seems like no matter what is thrown at this team, they show up, they show out, they're disciplined, they're well coached. And I think Nick Saban, and I guess this will be the last thing that I'll say about Alabama and this game before we just talk about the emotional aspect of this, is Nick Saban, for all the crap that I've probably given him over the years, he's not been the most likable guy by any means. I'm not even saying he is a likable guy. But the way that he took this loss with such grace and dignity, and basically admitted to the fact that Michigan outcoached them. He didn't use those words, but he took it, as the coaching staff and say, look, that's a really good Michigan football team and really well coached. He gave Michigan their flowers, and the Alabama players as well. They just, I was just blown away by just overall, right? I know we talk about some of the Bama fans and stuff, but as a program, as unlikable as they can be just because they've been Alabama for the last 15 years or whatever it's been, man, they took that loss with a lot of dignity and a lot of grace. And I guess you can do that when you've won like multiple national championships over the last several years. I think it's a little easier to take that one on the chin, but man, just an absolutely incredible win for Michigan in this program. Brant, quickly, short little segment here. That moment, I want you to take me to it. Michigan they survive and make it to overtime after that muff punt that just scared the crap out of me. They luckily make it to overtime. Talk me through your emotions there as Michigan gets the football.
Well, let me take you before they get the football. Michigan, out of nowhere, calls a timeout for apparently no reason. And they aren't asked about it. Nobody has talked about it. That was one of the most mind-blowing, odd situations I've ever seen where you can just go into overtime. You don't have to take another snap. Dave, we have seen too many fluky, he has trouble with the snap moments in Michigan football history for us to be calling some sort of random timeout to make us snap the ball again on the half-yard line and not do any sort of tush-push situation. We're just trying to knee it and keep it out of the end zone. It had me absolutely baffled.
Bizarre. That was bizarre. I totally forgot about that until you just brought that up. That was bizarre.
That's because we got away with it in a weird way, and there was absolutely no reason besides bringing everybody, I guess, over to say, you know what, you don't have to calm down because you're going to overtime. I don't understand any of that. So anyway, Dave, let's move on from that. We're going to overtime. Alabama wins the toss, and I immediately got upset because I'm thinking, I do not want to get the ball first here. Although my second thought was, well, we just came off the field on a pretty good drive. So maybe we're hot right now. Maybe this team has some momentum right now. This might not be a bad thing. 2 runs later, Blake Corum spinning into the end zone. It felt like out of nowhere, but as you watch that happen, I felt like, thank God, we can trust Jim Harbaugh to kick an extra point here. And I know I was watching that extra point on pins and needles, but I never wanted Michigan to go for 2. I never felt like in that moment that you needed to risk it for the biscuit to put up an 8-point lead. It wasn't worth it to me. You make Alabama go score their touchdown, and if they want to put the game on a 2-point conversion, then they sure can. But I loved the way that Harbaugh handled that situation. I love the 2 play calls down the stretch in overtime. Again, out coaching Alabama. And when Jalen Milroe hits his run, he falls down at like the 9-yard line, making it one of the most tough positions right there, right? You've got 4 downs now from the 10-yard line, basically, to get it in the end zone. I felt very comfortable with that. So I love that they got set up with that 1st and goal from the 9 or 10. And then obviously, Dave, you didn't mention Mason Graham earlier, but I know you know how crucial that play was to absolutely go into the backfield, blow that play up. Kid from Anaheim, California, in front of all of his friends and family to make a play like that. Just a grinder, man. Just a kid that you feel absolutely great for, that kind of has waited his turn. I know he was a phenom last year, but has come up through the ranks, and now he's going to be an absolute all-star coming into next season. And, man, with basically, to me, the play of the game, because that backs them up. Now they're in the 3rd and goal. They hit that pass on the 3rd down. They're in the end zone, Dave. But with the negative play, they're at the 3-yard line or 4-yard line. Now Milroe's got to do his thing, and we all saw how the 4th down played out. So I just wanted to point out that Mason Graham play because I think that was the moment, Dave, where I said, oh my God, this might be it. 2 plays. You are 2 plays away from going to the national championship, and it just felt like that defense had all the momentum at that moment. And I will say, you talked about Nick Saban quickly. I will talk about Jalen Milroe. While he's not perfect, while he's not by any means an NFL quarterback today, that guy put that Alabama team on his shoulders and willed them, with bad snaps and all, to be in a position to win a football game against the number one team in the country. And for that dude needs to be, he gets his flowers too, because he is a load to handle. He is an absolute freight train when he's running downhill. And to his credit, his offensive line made enough holes for him to get through. But man, when he is heading downhill at you, Mike Sanders still didn't want that smoke, man. Like, it felt like time after time he was just kind of pushing dudes to the side, and that was the game in the nutshell.
At the risk of just sounding just like a laughable Michigan fan for what I'm about to say, because any Alabama or Georgia fan or Ohio State, Clemson, whatever. By the way, this is the first year in the college football playoff history that one of those 4 teams I just named are not in the championship game, which is just an insane stat. But understanding that what I'm about to say is just like, oh gosh, Michigan fans, you're just so desperate. Yeah, we are desperate. Because I'm gonna talk you through my emotions of that game, and I'm not gonna bring you back to the start of overtime. Brant did a great job recapping that. But when it came down and it's 4th and goal, I fall to my knees on my living room floor. Okay, I am basically covering my head, and I'm rocking, and I'm scared. And with my buddy Mike, who joined us on the podcast earlier this year, and he's crouched down, and it's just, you can hear a pin drop in the house, just because nothing as a Michigan fan has gone our way. It just hasn't. Okay, we've been close. We've scratched the surface. We've been right there, and it just doesn't ever quite get over that hump. But when they collapsed on Jalen Milroe, and I saw the Michigan sidelines and these players go sprinting down the field, I'm like, I just couldn't believe it. Like, it was a surreal moment. We're screaming, we're yelling, it's emotional. My kids are here, their friends are here, and everyone's just like screaming at the top of their lungs. And it was like, in that moment, I'm like, dude, this is what it's all about. As a sports fan, as a Michigan fan, is like, these are the moments, like, even for my own kids, where I'm like, I don't want you to ever forget this. Like, this is what it's about. People laugh about sports and say, oh, it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of life. Man, as a diehard sports fan, those are the moments that you live for right there. And as I'm tucking my son in that night at we were up late to the halftime game of Washington, Texas. I'm tucking him in, and he looks over at me and says, Dad, Michigan did it. They actually did it. He's 4 years old. And I'm like, dude,
all he knows is winning.
You're right. All he knows is winning. But I'm like, dude, they did do it. And man, what a beautiful, beautiful moment. You're not a national champion yet. I understand that. But with it being the Rose Bowl, with it being Alabama, with it being Jim Harbaugh against Nick Saban, and all the controversy that has surrounded Harbaugh, this program, the NFL, you name it, just a surreal moment, and one that I don't ever want to forget.
Dave, did it seem like to you that it just meant a little more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, Alabama fans will laugh and be like, oh, well, yeah, look at there. We're here every year. Yeah, you're right. Oh, you are right. Guess who hasn't been there? Me. I haven't. Not my team. All right. So, yeah, it meant a little bit more. I think it meant a little bit more to those players as well.